Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 81st episode of the Inbox, starting off with a question from Cylon HD saying, will we be able to add a bed to a ship that doesn't come with one originally, like say trading a little cargo space for a bed in the Reliant? Thanks, keep up the great work. I'll try. I haven't seen this specifically mentioned, but I would make the assumption that if there's a kind of utility point or a size point, then you would probably be able to do that. A good example is in our hangars today. There's certain sizes of item ports to where you can actually stick something, and I think Item System 2.0 is going to kind of integrate some of that same behavior. So if there's some sort of item port in the back of your Reliant, then you should be able to add a bed at the sake of cargo space. Now there's another way that may end up playing out. For example, you may be able to get a bed that has the cargo locks on the bottom, so the mag plates can actually keep it in place. So that may end up being an option. So I think it's an interesting kind of question, and I think it's something that could give a lot more flexibility to some ships if sleep ends up being as important as we think it's going to be, and adding it as a log-off point, especially if you're willing to sacrifice something to get it in return. So I would say, yeah, that's probably pretty likely that they go in that direction, but I haven't personally seen it mentioned yet. Joe's Got More says, with the moons and soon planets coming in the near future, terrain is going to be challenging when on ground vehicles. Do you think we may get climbing equipment in the distant future to get to mountain peaks like was alluded in the Gamescom demo last year? Yeah, and I think some of that's also going to be based on choosing the right ground vehicle. For example, I don't necessarily think a Ursa is going to be able to conquer terrain the same way like a Dragonfly would be. So you could probably get higher up a mountain on a Dragonfly based on its hovering ability and maybe less impact on the elevation and the slope. As far as your personal character goes, I think you'll probably see something like that. I mean, we're already getting things like bounty hunting equipment, like handcuffs and a baton. So I think if they really want you to be able to get to any part of a map, then I think it's probably pretty likely that you're going to end up having some sort of tools to help you out. We've all seen in games when it gets really hard to climb a hill, it gets really stupid the way you kind of slide around, and I'm pretty confident CIG doesn't want that to be the case. So I would think we'll probably get something maybe like an explorer's kit or something like that. There's always another option that a ship could just drop you off up there. They wouldn't be able to necessarily land, but they could probably hover so close that you could just walk off of it. So even if they don't, I think there's going to be alternatives to help you out. But honestly, I think you're going to be able to see that at some point. I think it's super low priority. So I wouldn't count on that being something that happens anytime soon, but they're trying to flesh out the universe in a big way, and I think that would be something that would play nicely into that. Llama says, question regarding shields. Do you think there will be certain circumstances when a ship will have to lower its shields in order to carry out a task, docking, repairing, launching a fighter, or even EVA, like the Enterprise lowering its shields to transport a crew member to another location? I think there probably is going to be times when having your shield down is a benefit to you. I don't know if there's going to be times where you have to have your shields down in order to do something. You're not going to be able to turn off your ship and keep your shields on, for example. So that would be an example of a time when if you want to land your ship and leave it, you would have to turn off your shields. As far as the docking process is concerned, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of docking in the game anymore. You're talking about landing pads, or you're talking about landing in another ship, and the big ships will end up having some sort of dock or need to use a shuttle. So it's an interesting question. I would say that launching a fighter, maybe. I think that's probably the most likely one to be in that category, just because it's going to be flying very fast. Going EVA, for example, I don't see as being as big of an issue, just because, we know today that ballistics can penetrate shields. I'm wondering if there's something like items traveling under a certain speed are able to pass through shields without consequence, something like that. So maybe a person doesn't have issues, but you couldn't launch a ship at that speed because it would start causing problems. And if that ship had its shields up, maybe the shields end up kind of connecting and causing a problem. So I think there are going to be times that are going to make it so you want to or have to turn off your shields, but I don't know what those are going to be specifically, because some of that has to do with how they're programming things in the engine, and we just don't have enough of those things today to really know. Repairing, for example, I think it makes sense. If you're talking about a crucible, for example, they need to get close enough to actually work on your ship. Well, if the crucible has its shields on and you have your shields on, you're probably going to end up colliding based on your shields, and that may be a problem. So, yeah, like I said, I think there's going to be times. It's hard for me to say that, yes, this is going to be it and this is not, but I think we can probably say pretty confidently that there's gameplay implications for turning off your shields, and there's times where it's going to benefit others if you do so. So I think based on that and the kind of this for that type of gameplay they want to do, I think that it's pretty likely. Dan McSharp says, hey Youngblood, it just occurred to me that most race ships won't have a jump drive. How are we going to handle getting to various locations for races other than using a Connie to transport an Archimedes? Is anyone planning to race a Mustang Gamma or a 350R going to have to put it in a Polaris to get there? What exactly is the mechanic between quantum drive, jump drives, or jump points and jump drives? Okay, so your information is just a little bit off. The only ships that aren't going to be able to actually equip a jump drive are like the snub noses. So that's going to be like your P-52, your P-72, your 85X. Like those types of ships are not going to be able to actually equip a jump engine. That being said, though, Mustang Gamma, 350R, M50, Razor, like those ships are fully fledged ships. They're not in that snub-nose category, meaning they will be able to put a jump engine on there and be able to go wherever they want. Now, that doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. They are not going to be fuel-efficient ships. They're not going to be long range. You know, they're designed for performance, and if you have too much fuel, you're too heavy, and, you know, they're designed for maximum output. So, you know, if there's a race, you know, 3 systems away, you may have to stop for fuel 3 times in order to get there. So you may want to take a buddy's Polaris just to shuttle you over there if that's a better option for you. So it's not going to force you into that situation, but it may be a better or smarter option from time and kind of wear and tear perspective. As far as the mechanic between quantum drive, jump points, and jump drives, quantum is going to be your in-system travel over long distance. Basically, that's what you do today in Star Citizen when you want to go from like Port Al-Azhar to, you know, Yella, or Yella to Security Port Korea. That's going to be your quantum engine, and most ships are going to have that, just like the jump drive. Basically, the only ones that aren't going to have that, again, are snub noses, with the exception of the 85X. The 85X comes with a quantum drive, which makes it a little bit more capable. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, like other scout ships that come in get the benefit, but the true snub noses are not going to have that. As far as jump points and jump drives, you need to be able to have a jump drive to be able to enter a jump point and come out on the other side. It's basically, in lore, what happens is it's actually an extension of your quantum drive. It's kind of this like device that sits in front of it and opens your quantum drive just enough to kind of create a rift in space that allows you to travel through it. That's kind of the lore behind it. So, you know, if you roll up to a jump point but you don't have a jump drive, you're not able to actually open the point to go through it. So that's part of the problem you're going to have. You can't just take a snub nose through one of those points because you're not going to be able to retain that actual jump point as you go through it. So it's just not going to let you enter in game. So that's kind of the breakdown there. Hopefully that helps kind of answer your question. Cronus says, would you be able to report to the NPC law officers for crimes committed against you? Will they take action? I would say yes and yes, but I think it's going to depend a little bit. If it's in monitored space, for example, you're probably going to have your crime reported for you automatically. If you're not in monitored space, you may end up needing to go to the NPC law offices and file a report or something like that, and you may be able to just take out a bounty on that person on your own. As far as taking action, they're going to take action against anybody that's actually a wanted person. So you're not going to necessarily be able to go in and just say, hey, advocacy, this guy shot my ship for no reason, go get him. But if they did that in monitored space, that person would be wanted, and then the advocacy would be going after them. I think if you are attacked in non-monitored space, that's when you would go to a bounty hunter instead of a true law officer in the game and say, hey, this dick just shot me in, you know, unmonitored space. I've got beef with him. I want you to go take care of it. And then the bounty hunter takes out that mission to go get that person. So there's going to be different ways, and it's going to depend on the reputation system and where this kind of crime actually took place. But yeah, it's going to break down in some way like that. Hochi Cheong1 says, may I ask a personal question? Of course, that's what this is all about. If you own a Polaris already and you have enough funds and are willing to spend it, you choose an Idris P or a Javelin. And thank you for answering question series. It helps me a lot. I'm glad to hear it. For me, I would take the Idris. I love the Javelin. I want a Javelin. It's something I really wish I had in my hangar. I just don't. I have a hard time justifying spending the money on it, even though that's not what you're saying in this question. But the reason I would take an Idris over a Javelin is just for the sole purpose that an Idris is actually going to be more of a multi-purpose ship than the Javelin is. I see the Idris as being kind of a ship that's focused on combat, but also able to do some transportation and some like sector control and maybe even a little bit of exploration. A Javelin, in my mind, is going to be more combat focused. Now, they're both going to be very combat focused. You can't really go wrong with either one of them, but they go in it about it a different way. I like kind of the slightly more hanger aspect of the Idris over the one ability to kind of carry a single Redeemer in the Javelin. So for me and what I want to do, the Idris makes a little bit more sense to me. Frankly, I want both of them. I'm having a hard time buying either one of them, but I think, like I said, if taking that out of the equation, the Idris for me is the one that I think makes a little bit more sense. And our last two questions are patron questions, starting off with one from Sketchy. It says, do you think it'll be possible to steal components off the outside of a ship like guns? Really interesting question. And I would say probably yes. And the thing that makes me say that is kind of our salvage mechanics, and knowing that the Reclaimer comes with kind of the transportable little sawing ship that you're going to be able to take out. So I think technically if you disabled a ship or kind of snuck up on one, I think you would be able to actually cut something off and treat it almost like salvage. And if it's a working gun, then you could probably keep it on your, for yourself. I think that's a very dangerous thing to do, but I think it could be a very interesting thing to do, and maybe we'll try and do a video on that at some point, just for the hell of it. But yeah, I don't see any reason why that couldn't happen. I would be surprised if you got through with it without disabling the ship, because I'm assuming if you start cutting into that, you're going to start that ship's going to start taking damage, and then all of a sudden there's going to be like alerts going off all over that ship. And our last question is from Rockseeker. He says, will there be limits on the number of NPCs a player can hire in order to prevent a single wealthy player from assembling an army of NPC and taking over a space station or a moon base? I would doubt it. Now, I think there's probably going to be some restrictions in how effective you can be. You may need to be able to give them enough control so it almost becomes more of a real-time strategy game as opposed to actually like an FPS experience. But I don't see anything in the mechanics that would prevent you from doing that. We've already heard them say that you could take an Idris out with nothing but NPCs. Now, you're not going to be the most effective person in the world in an Idris in that situation, but I mean, if that's the case, you're talking about, what, like 40-something NPCs in that category? So if they're saying that's capable, I don't know what would stop you from having 100 people. Now, that may be something they end up doing and just saying, you know what, it's too much for a player to manage, so here's your max. But again, I don't see anything today that makes me think that's a restricting factor outside of cost. So that's this episode of The Inbox. If you have questions, get them in. Otherwise, as always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more, and have a wonderful day. Take care.